Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Root Beer here once again, and we are looking at our very second question, question number 2, of course, on our 2016 Grade 9 Friar Contest. When Esther and her older brother Paul race, Esther takes 5 steps every 2 seconds, and each of her steps is 0.4 meters long. So we could make a little conversion and figure out how quickly Esther is actually moving. Paul also takes 5 steps every 2 seconds, but each of his steps is 1.2 meters long. Okay. In meters, how far does Esther travel in 2 seconds? Alright, well, we know that she takes 5 steps every 2 seconds. And we know each step is 0.4 meters. So we just multiply them out. 5 times 4 is 20, and you move the decimal place over 1, because we're actually doing not 4, but 4/10. So we'll get 2 meters. So Esther moves 2 meters in 2 seconds. Esther moves 2 meters when she takes 5 steps. Okay, now it's a light bulb question, so we don't actually need to worry about our explanation, but we do have our calculation there just in case. For B, in meters per second, what is Paul's speed? Okay, well, we know how long each of Paul's steps are. We know how many steps he takes per second. So, we can do our nice little calculation here. So, 5 steps for Paul will be, well, that's 1.2 meters per step. 1.5 times, sorry, not 1.5, 5 times 1.2, that'd be 5 times 12, or 60. Move the decimal place over. Paul does 60 meters every time he does 5 steps, but he does 5 steps in 2 seconds. So Paul's speed is going to be distance, 6 meters, divided by time, and that's 2 seconds. 6 over 2 is 3 meters per second. And that's our answer to part B. Paul's speed is 3 meters per second. Now we've got our 2 written questions here, so we're going to have to justify, maybe use complete sentences, that sort of a thing. C. If they both start a race at the same time, what distance ahead will Paul be after 2 minutes? Okay. So everything's been in seconds so far. We might want to convert 2 minutes into seconds. Remember, there are 60 seconds per minute. So that's something I would probably state right away. 2 minutes equals 120 seconds. Now, I know Paul's speed. So Paul's speed from part B is 3 meters per second. Now, we can use A up here to figure out, oh gosh, I can't even remember her name, Esther's speed. So Esther's speed, she does 2 meters in 2 seconds. So 2 meters in 2 seconds. Esther moves 1 meter per second. Okay. So how far does Paul go in 2 minutes, or 120 seconds? So in 120 seconds, Paul goes, so 3 meters per second times 120 seconds. 3 times 120 is going to be 360 meters. Okay. In 120 seconds, how far does Esther go? Well, now that we know Esther's speed, we just worked it out, and everything's in seconds, so the units will cancel out, we can see Esther goes 120 meters. And so the difference is going to be 240 meters. So Paul goes 240 meters further. Okay, we've got all our reasoning there. So that's how far ahead Paul will be, 240 meters. Okay, so D part. If Esther begins a race 3 minutes before Paul, so she gets a little bit of a lead time, a little bit of a head start, how much time does it take for Paul to catch Esther? Ah, okay. So we know their speeds. We worked them out just a moment ago. Okay, so how much of a... So, you know, we get them starting in the same place. Esther, Paul. But Esther gets to go for 3 minutes. So 3 minutes later, Paul's still waiting at the start. Esther has gone some distance. And then after that point on, Paul starts moving. Esther continues moving, and Paul has to catch up. Right? How quickly can Paul catch up to Esther? Well, every second, Esther will move 1 meter, but Paul will move 3 meters, and that's going to mean that he gains 2 meters every second on Esther. So we can see, or we can note, Paul gains 2 meters every second on Esther once they are both moving. Okay. So, that's how quickly Paul can catch up. That's the speed at which the distance between Paul and Esther is going to decrease. Now, I know Esther gets a 3-minute head start, or 180 seconds, just because everything else has been in seconds so far. So when Paul starts moving, Esther will be 1 meter per second times those 180 seconds. 180, of course, 60 seconds times 3 minutes. She'll be 180 meters ahead. And ahead, of course, is one word. So Paul closes the gap between them at 2 meters per second. Again, Paul is moving faster than 2 meters per second, but Esther is sort of working to maintain that gap by moving away from Paul. So effectively, Paul is gaining 2 meters every second. So we can see it takes, well, there's 180 meters between them, and we lose 2 meters every second. So 180 divided by 2 will be 90. So it takes 90 seconds, or 1.5 minutes, for Paul to catch up to Esther. Okay? And I think that's all we were asked for. How much time does it take for Paul to catch up to Esther? 90 seconds, or if you wanted to, you could convert it to 1.5 minutes, 1.5 minutes, or 3/halves of a minute, that sort of a thing. Okay. Key things that you want to have mentioned, I would say, would probably be, actually explaining where the 2 meters per second comes from. When one faster person is chasing a slower person, the relative distance, or the relative speeds between them, how quickly the faster person is catching up, is going to be the difference in their speeds. Okay? If they were heading the opposite direction, then the gap between them would be increasing at the sum of their speeds, but they're both moving the same direction, so we're going to take a difference. Okay? Other things to comment on, figuring out how far ahead Esther was, that's probably worth a mark, and then your final calculation, that would be worth another mark. So I'd say D part probably worth about 3 marks there. Probably something to the effect of 2 marks, 2 marks, 3 marks, 3 marks. That's usually how it breaks down when there are 4 parts. Alright, so that was question 2. Up next will be question number 3, which looks like it'll have some geometry in it. Feel free to give it a try before watching the next video, and I will see you there for more of our Friar.